My name is Mark Firestone. I'm the Associate Vice President of Guest Experiences at Conner Prairie. What that means is I'm really looking at the big picture of experience development here at Conner Prairie. What's the next big experience, the next big attraction, festival, event that we are planning? And so our biggest project right now is our Museum Experience Center, which is currently under construction. We're about halfway through that project right now. That building was built in the mid to late 80s, really as an administrative offices, ticketing, retail, but not really intended for exhibits. So we're actually going in and we're correcting that. And so we've gutted the building down to the exterior walls. We're rebuilding all new exhibit spaces inside of there. It will open with 6 dedicated exhibit areas versus 2 kind of retrofitted ones that we had in there previously. A new addition on the front, which will handle all of the ticketing, retail out there, and then another new addition on the back that we're calling the Overlook that will allow you to kind of from the second level look out over the grounds before you go out and explore them. So 2 of the projects that are going on in there are projects that I'm spearheading. One, we call it our intro space. Officially, we're calling it the Power of Place. But that gallery is going to talk about just how this place was created initially, from kind of telling it from the perspective of the White River, which has always been here and runs through our property. So the creation of this land, and then it kind of goes into all the different people groups that have called this place home over the centuries. And then kind of the third act, if you will, of that experience will be kind of talking about the Conner Prairie of today and the importance that it plays as kind of even a green space in an otherwise kind of urban sprawl area, and all the natural wildlife that calls this place home today, and just the stewardship that we have of keeping that going and how important that is. And so that's kind of the intro space. The other space that we are working on that I'm kind of helping spearhead is our indoor playscape. We actually call it an artscape, and that's because we've hired an artist. His name is Wes Bruce. His group is called The Curious Life. He's an artist that builds playscapes, and so he calls it an artscape because it's kind of very artistic, but it's also very playful. And that's also building on the natural environment here at Conner Prairie. It's going to have the river as a main feature of it that you'll kind of walk through the space. And then throughout the riverbanks, there's going to be little caves and things you can duck into and explore. And it's not a linear experience. Whereas the intro space is a very linear, you kind of follow this story. This will be more of a go explore. And so you can kind of just explore on your own, go in these little caves, climb up into this tree that we're going to have, a 30-foot tall sycamore tree. It's not real, of course, but that will be in there. And it's all indoors, so that it's going to be a great year-round attraction. And that's another thing that this building is doing for us. It's taking Conner Prairie, which is primarily an outdoor experience, and creating a lot of indoor spaces. So that makes us more marketable in those winter months when people maybe don't want to go outside as much. So that's going to change how people visit us. And then also in that space, we have an exhibit that will be going in there. It'll probably run for 3 to 5 years. This space is designed to change every so often so we can highlight different aspects of Conner Prairie's history. But we're going to open that space in an exhibit called Torn. And it is really focusing on the stories of William Conner and his brother John Conner, but through the lens of their wives who were part of the Lenape Native American tribe. And it's a very complicated story. There were a lot of complexities to life at that time, but we're really kind of digging into what that looked like. Part of that story is, William Conner, his first wife was Makunjas, who is a Lenape woman. And they had, I don't remember how many children, but they had a whole family that was living on this property. And William Conner was also one of the people who signed the treaty that got the Native Americans removed from this area, including his wife and children. So it's a very complicated story. So we're starting to dig into some of those histories in that gallery and kind of tell that story, but in a tasteful way. This area is called River Crossing. This was built as part of our Civil War Journey exhibit several years ago. This is connected to an outdoor splash pad. The splash pad is actually telling the story, if you are familiar with it, of a riverboat called the Alice Dean that was actually attacked during the Civil War on the Ohio River. So this battle actually took place in southern Indiana. And then, so we have the big riverboat out there that's kind of showing that. We have a little section on the back that's like firefighters, like trying to put out the fire on the boat. And then this area is really just kind of an indoor play space, kind of showing a bridge going over the river and kind of where they would have been, dropping off supplies or deliveries or things like that. We have a little train set because there would have been trains in the area. So this area is currently slated for some redevelopment in the next few years. Our Civil War Journey area closed last year. It just kind of had reached the end of its life cycle. It had been open for 10 or more years. And so we're actually working on developing this whole area back here into instead of, it was 1863, we're going to bump it up a couple decades, and we're going to go into the 1920s, 1930s, and we're going to talk about transportation history in Indiana. A lot of people don't realize that at that time period, Indiana was the second largest producer of automobiles. We have the Stutz building downtown, there's Cole, Studebaker, there's a lot of them you can name off a lot of them aren't around anymore, but in that time period, there was a lot of automobile manufacturing. So we want to talk about that story. This building that we're in is already themed as a train depot. So let's talk about what was going on with railroads in that time period. We already have that kind of ready to go here. So build on that. And then we're also going to talk about in this area, it's kind of going to focus on two things. So we'll have that transportation piece. We're also going to focus on kind of agricultural history, but only up to that 1920s, 1930s time period. And so kind of talk about what were the innovations that were happening in farming, in agriculture and all those things around that time frame. And so we have that big farmhouse over there. So using that, right now we're using that as office space because we all got removed from the building, but when we all go back in, then we'll return that to a guest experience facing property, and then we can kind of use that to tell some of those stories as well. So that's kind of what's going on back here. My educational journey has kind of had a lot of twists and turns, and didn't necessarily go the way I thought it would right out of high school. I would say probably as a sophomore or junior in high school, I kind of learned about this thing called Disney Imagineering, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds fun. I'd like to do that. But in those days, there wasn't really a course or a plan of action to pursue that career. You were just kind of left to figure it out. And so, in my head, my dad was an architect, so I kind of had that influence. And in my head, I'm like, okay, well, the word is Imagineering. Engineering is part of that. I've had some exposure to engineering through my dad's career, so I said, I'm going to be an engineer. So I actually started out as an engineering student at Purdue, West Lafayette, and made it 3 semesters before I said, I'm not going to be an engineer. That was a great idea. I don't think that that's really what I want to do. So I actually took some time off because I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I ended up coming back to Indianapolis and working full time. If I wasn't in school, I was like, well, then I should get a job somewhere. So I ended up working full time at the Indianapolis Zoo. And I just got a job working in their front office, selling tickets and renting strollers and all that kind of stuff. And as I was doing that, I was like, well, maybe I'm not destined to design these places, but maybe I can help operate them. And so I started looking into that as an option, and ultimately found what was then called Tourism Conventions and Event Management. I think it's changed names, but at IUPUI, and enrolled in that program. And so I actually completed my bachelor's with that degree, and then kind of finished out my time at the zoo. I actually left the zoo. I did go work at Disney for a short period of time, a little over a year, as just a ride operator, but it was an entry-level position. But what I learned about how that company functions and the amount of detail that they go into, I mean, even down to what I had to wear, how I had to talk to people, how I interacted with guests, how I interacted with my fellow cast members, as they call them, all left a big impression on me in terms of, how these places can operate to the best of their ability and really provide great experiences for their guests. So after that I came back to Indianapolis and got a job at the Children's Museum, where I was overseeing our visitor services team there. Worked there for 5 years. Then I took a big detour and went into a kind of a nonprofit mission related position. This was mostly due to going on a trip with my church. Went over to Nairobi, Kenya for a week, came back and was like, ooh, I want to be involved with this organization. So I started volunteering with them. That turned into them offering me a full-time job. So I left the industry for a minute and helped build a child sponsorship program essentially, but I was relying on that kind of operational knowledge and expertise that I'd gained from working in the hospitality industry to kind of help build this program and build processes. That was a kind of a 6-year job, 3 years of which were spent here and 3 years of which were actually spent living in Nairobi, Kenya, working with the team directly there, getting that kind of helping to coordinate things and help them be in a place that they could be successful. So that ended. I came back, was looking for a place to land, ended up going back to the Children's Museum very briefly before coming here to Conner Prairie. When I came to Conner Prairie, I was actually overseeing our membership team. That then turned into overseeing our membership team and our guest services team. And then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, fortunately, we were able to remain employed, but we were all working from home and we were closed to the public. And I remember sitting at home and just kind of like everybody was evaluating, life. And my wife said to me, she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I've always wanted to be on the design side. I mean, I've done this for 10 years or 20 years almost by that point. I really want to be in the creative side. And she's like, well, go do it. And I said, well, I don't know how to do that. So we looked into, I actually just started Googling like schools, universities that had, some sort of program that might help me with that. And was delighted to find that there was a program in Indianapolis at then IUPUI. And I couldn't believe it. And so I reached out to Christian Rogers, and he was the contact, and I just said, hey, what is this? Can you tell me more about it? I'd love to learn more about what this is. We met via Zoom or whatever, and he kind of filled me in, and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. So I enrolled in that program. I did the certificate. I completed it in 3 semesters. Fortunately, some of my bachelor's degree credits transferred into some of the things that needed to fulfill that certificate. And so I did kind of the 3 core classes, and then I actually did a senior project. But that was kind of how I got into that kind of certificate program. And then when I completed the certificate program, I came back to Conner Prairie, my bosses at the time, and I said, and they knew I was doing this, I said, hey, I finished this program. I know that we have a lot of projects that are in the works, for this place over the next 10 years. I would love it if I could just have a seat at the table to kind of be involved in those. And keep in mind, at that point, I was still overseeing our guest services and membership teams. And my boss said, well, let's talk about that. Like, what do you want to do? What do you ultimately hope what's your goal? And I said, well, I think my goal would be, to work for one of these companies that we're about to contract to come in and do all this design work for us. And he said, that's interesting. He's like, we are going to have a lot of companies that we're going to be contracting with to do a lot of this design work, but we probably need someone internally that's like their liaison, that's working with them and like making sure that there's someone keeping track of the big picture of what's going on. And so that ended up turning into a conversation with another division VP, and they essentially created a role for me to do that. And I moved divisions and moved to new jobs. And my job title at that point was Director of Experience Development. And that was a new position that they had created. And my main focus was kind of developing out experiences as part of our 10-year master experience plan. And so it was putting out RFPs to get companies to submit proposals for some of the work that we're doing, including the 2 projects in the Welcome Center. So I kind of found myself in the middle of all of that, and that just came from 1, me doing the certificate program, and 2, me asking the question, hey, can I be involved? Fast forward to last November, due to some staffing changes, they kind of transitioned my role into what it is now, which is an associate vice president of guest experiences, where I still am doing that job, but now I also am overseeing our team that does the planning for all of our festivals. So our beer festival, our Hot Air Balloon Festival, Headless Horseman, Mary Prairie Holiday. So I'm overseeing the planning of those things as well. I have a lot more involvement in the development of actual exhibits. So whereas previously I was kind of like the big picture, what are the major things that we're doing? When it got down to what is this exhibit going to focus on, that was another team, but I have a little bit more involvement with that now. I have some oversight of our historic research and curatorial teams, and then our director of digital experiences, who actually does a lot of work, video. He does a lot of video work and helps create any digital assets that are needed, whether it's for an exhibit, for a festival, for any other type of marketing or media. So my role expanded, but that's kind of my journey that I've been on. So I think when I first approached my division VP at the time about making that kind of transition, I never imagined that it would turn into what it actually did. I thought it would be, hey, I just get to be in these meetings and see what's going on. But I think he was very interested and very supportive of this certificate that I was pursuing, and wanted to know more about it, and wanted to know, like, well, what are you learning? Like, how do you think you could use that? And so being able to talk about with him what I was learning in those classes and how that could be applied to something like this, I think was a huge help. When we had the conversation with the other division VP, who I ended up reporting to after that change happened, one thing that was really valuable was I could show them coursework that I had done. I'm like, hey, here are projects that I've worked on throughout this certificate program, and you can see, like, these are the steps, these are the things that I've done, these are some of the models that I've created. And so being able to have those assets to show them, like, I've done some of this work, I think was also very helpful. I think all of that just kind of combined with my 20 years of understanding how guests visit places and how you need to have processes and how operations should be set up to be efficient but also customer friendly. I think all those things just kind of combined for them to say, yeah, I think that this is going to be a good fit. But definitely there was very much support for me doing that program, and curiosity about what it was and how that would be applicable to making that switch. Some things that I learned from the program that I can really bring into my work on a daily basis. The first thing that comes to mind is a lot of the work that I do is sometimes just, well, I don't want to say a lot of work, but some of the work that I do is ideating, taking these concepts that we've kind of talked about and trying to figure out how we can flesh that out and make an actual experience out of it. And that's not all just me, that's a group of people. But then it's taking that and at a certain stage, before you get too far into it, and packaging that up and presenting that to our leadership and getting their buy-in. And sometimes they're like, yes, we like that. And sometimes they're like, what if we change this? So I think one thing that was really helpful for me was really learning I'll call it the art of the pitch, if you will. Putting together, documentation, a presentation, and really pitching the idea and communicating it visually to leadership of an organization who are really the decision makers of whether we're going forward with this or going in a different direction. And so getting that idea to a stage where you can visually communicate to them through a presentation and be able to answer their questions, but really help immerse them as much as you can through your presentation and walk them through what that experience would be like, I think was a really helpful thing that I learned throughout that experience. Otherwise, you're just kind of going in and going through a slide deck and nobody's excited about it. I probably dug into this more than was required for the curriculum, but I got really into 3D modeling. And so we learned how to use SketchUp, which is such a simple 3D modeling program. We used it for a few things and we learned some basics, but then I took that and I'm like, this is fascinating. I want to learn more about this. And so I'm not an artist. I can't draw, I can't paint, I'm not an artist, but I can do 3D modeling now. And so it's that's kind of my way of contributing to, kind of showing what these experiences could be. So for example, I have this whole area that we're in back here that used to be Civil War Journey, built in SketchUp, showing what it could look like if we move forward with this transportation and history or an agricultural history kind of project. So I have that all built in 3D to show them. I think the reason it's important to have that practical hands-on technology exposure in an academic setting is, especially in this field, what I'm finding is it's less about, you know, having the piece of paper that says you know how to do this, but it's more about having the experience of working in these pieces of software, these programs, this piece of technology. So for me, SketchUp was that thing. And you know, one thing I've picked up on is SketchUp is widely used throughout this industry. So that's a huge skill to have. There are a few others that I'd like to dig into sometime, you know, like Blender, or, you know, what's a couple, I can't think of them, of course, right now, but it's like there are others to kind of take that to the next level. Like, how do you make these models look more photorealistic? Like, that's the kind of thing that I would probably be the next kind of natural step for me to take, is getting into that type of modeling. Like I said, I'm probably never going to be a person who actually sketches things, because that's not my skill set artistically speaking, but I can work with computers, I can do technology, I can do modeling. And so, but having that, and again, that kind of plays into what I said earlier, I could show them models, like, these are models of things that I created in this course, and this is what I could do for Conner Prairie in this role. So I think the type of skills that someone needs to be successful in a field like this is really to try to think outside of the box and be open to ideas from other people. I think team collaboration is one of the best ways that ideas kind of get formed and fleshed out. One person does not come up with all the ideas in any aspect of this industry, and that holds true for me here at Conner Prairie. I may sit in a position where I'm leading these teams, but they're not all my ideas. And so I think a huge skill is teamwork, learning how to collaborate with people, how to bounce ideas off of each other, and how to provide constructive feedback and criticism to ideas until you kind of are whittling that down to whatever the concept is you're going to go forward with. I think one thing that has been super helpful to me is just having experience in the industry at any level. I was not in any amount of design while I was working for Walt Disney Company, but understanding their culture, understanding their priorities, understanding the way that they do things has definitely influenced kind of how I envision designing things and things that we need to think about and incorporate. They're doing it at such a high level, and they have much higher budgets than we do, but that doesn't mean we can't take things from that and learn it and apply it to what we're doing. And so I think I would encourage anybody who wants to get into this industry at some point, even if it's just for a summer, go get a job at an attraction and work, whether it's frontline ticket sales, whether it's ride operator, getting that experience, because also when you're going through the design phase of an attraction, understanding how those places operate and function is huge. You know, you can have a designer who has no idea about operations of a place, design a space that looks beautiful, but it's just not functional. And so having some operational knowledge of how theme parks, zoos, museums, any of those types of places work is going to be a huge asset in the design field. And so I think that benefited me significantly. I had all of that experience. It would be easy for people to think that to get this kind of experience, you need to go to someplace like Orlando. You need to go to Los Angeles, you know. But actually Indianapolis has a pretty robust attraction industry, if you think about it. Our children's museum, which I've worked at, is the largest one in the world, not just Indiana, not just the United States. It's the largest children's museum in the world that's called a children's museum. And they are world renowned. They have relationships with Mattel, they have relationships with Disney, they have relationships that they can develop experiences using that IP for those companies. And so that's huge for this market. And the Children's Museum operates very much like Disney does in terms of their attention to detail and what types of things that they're considering when they're designing exhibits and experiences. So that's a great example. The Indianapolis Zoo is another great example of, that's probably the closest thing to a theme park we have in the Indianapolis market. I mean, it is an outdoor physical space. They do have rides. My last job there was overseeing the rides team. So they have a small roller coaster and a train ride and a carousel. And so you can gain a lot of experience about how those types of things operate. They may not be themed at the same level that you're going to get at a Disney, but they operate in very much the same way. So that's a great experience. Even here at Conner Prairie, we're maybe not as well known outside of our kind of regional market, but when people do come, we actually do get guests from all 50 states if you look at our zip code report. But if you look at what we're doing, a lot of the things that we're working on for the future are really kind of being defined by this themed entertainment kind of idea. How can we use themed entertainment to tell history, to immerse people in the stories that we want to tell? And I think there's been a shift in the museum field, not just here, but across the country, that museums need to engage people in different ways than maybe what they have before. People aren't as excited to just go in and look at something and not be able to touch it and not be able to interact with it, and people want that more kind of immersive experience. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do here is, and we've been doing this in a sense for 50 years with Prairie Town. You walk into Prairie Town and everybody's dressed in 1836 clothing. They talk to you like it's 1836. If you talk about your cell phone, they don't know what you're talking about. So that's like full immersion in a historical context. And so I think we're trying to figure out how we can take that and modernize it and apply it in new stories that we want to tell. So, things that we're talking about for this area, if we do transportation, do we put people in a train simulator and kind of take them on a journey through time? But we're telling those stories, but it's kind of like a ride attraction. We have a concept of putting people in tractors and letting them feel like they're driving a tractor around our farm and learning about how farming worked in the 1920s, 1930s. And so how can we pull some of those themed entertainment kind of experiences into the museum world? And we're not trying to turn Conner Prairie into a theme park, but there was a great quote by Bob Weiss, who is the former president of Disney Imagineering, and I don't know if I'll get it right, but it was something like, "This isn't about turning museums into theme parks, it's about creating great experiences at great museums." And so that's really kind of what I'm trying to do as in the position that I have, is kind of shepherd our teams in that direction and say, how can we use some of these tools? Like, let's expand our toolbox and use some of these things that are being used in other places in the industry and modify them and adapt them to tell the stories that we want to tell. And so from that standpoint, I think Indianapolis has a lot of opportunities to learn about the industry, whether it's any of the places I've mentioned or new fields or the State Museum, where there's a lot of opportunities. We have a great museum scene here, not theme parks, but that doesn't mean you can't learn those things from those other locations. What I would say to prospective students who are looking to get into this program is definitely start networking now. LinkedIn is a great resource to connect with people in the industry. As you get into the classes, one thing that was really beneficial for me and that I really enjoyed was they bring in guest speakers who are experts in the field, and you get to either a like video interview or a Q&A session, or if you get to go to sometimes you can go on a field visit and talk to people. Take advantage of all of those things. Learn as much from as many different people as you can. Like, the courses are a great backbone to kind of give you that primary knowledge and that foundational knowledge that you need, and it will teach you all of the things like the process of developing a themed attraction. But like, use that and build on. Don't just rest on that. Get involved in groups, in site visits, go visit attractions, talk to people, ask questions. And don't ask questions like, hey, how can I get a job with you? Ask questions like, hey, tell me about how you do this and how does this work? Like, be interested in learning more. Don't just use your networking connections as, hey, can you help me get a job? Like, be genuine and be genuinely interested and be genuinely genuinely actively trying to learn from them. I think the networking is a huge part of this industry. What you'll find is it's actually kind of a small industry, and everybody kind of knows everybody. And so once you start getting connected to people, you start getting connected to other people. And I think that's a huge piece of it, is just be involved, network, learn, be open, be a sponge, absorb as much of that knowledge as you can, and get as much experience as you can, whether it's an entry-level job or an internship or something along those lines. I think all of that's going to be a huge help. Yeah, I feel very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, and I owe a lot of credit to me getting into this position, to this certificate program through Purdue, and just the connections that I was able to make, the things I was able to learn, and even the projects I was able to work on that gave me real world experience. All of that kind of came together to help me get to where I am today.